The goal for this homework was to apply your anthropological knowledge to a particular case study, that is, the three societies that Margaret Mead studied in Papua New Guinea, which provided us some great examples for comparing and contrasting different aspects of society. You were all required to write an essay summarizing the gender ideologies that Mead observed among these groups, as well as the conclusions she made regarding sex and temperament. I hope the list of questions helped you to achieve the type of holistic understanding that we seek in anthropology. So the question Mead sought to answer with her research was whether sexes have strict temperaments or personalities. Based on your reading, you should have noticed some stark differences between these three societies when it comes to the behaviors and attitudes of women and men. Here are some takeaways of her observations within each group. For the Arapesh, she noticed that men and women tended to act in a mild and responsible manner, especially when it came to raising their children. In fact, the gender divisions and gender roles they practiced appear to be very similar to the Western stereotypes for the sexes. The Mundugumor were an interesting case study because she characterized both sexes as having fierce, sexually charged, assertive, and loud personalities. In this case, both women and men displayed what could be considered typical male behavior from a Western perspective. And then, among the Chambuli, she saw an inverse of Western stereotypes at the time of the book's publication. Men were the ones who gossiped, they worried about their appearance, that is, they wore nice clothes and did their hair because they were concerned about whether women would marry them. Women, on the other hand, were seen as very competent and the type of no-nonsense business managers within their villages. What Mead concluded is that a culture may impose personalities and patterns on one gender, or both, that are only a subset of the whole spectrum of possibilities available to humans. This really came to define the culture and personality school of thought that Mead and Benedict were responsible for promoting. After the publication of her book, Mead's findings were questioned as what people saw as convenient examples for her research, but she insisted their selection was only good luck. She sort of just struck gold in terms of finding these three societies that represent very different personality types based on gender. Recent ethnographers, however, among the Mundugumor and Chambuli, who nowadays go by different names that you see listed here, have actually verified some of Mead's work. For example, we now know that the Chambuli returned to the lake area where they resided in 1933 after having been exiled for 20 years in the nearby hills. This meant that competition among males was lessened while they focused on rebuilding their community. Women, on the other hand, had already rebuilt their barter system while living up in the hills, so they may have appeared more dominant because they were basically able to pick back up where they left off. So in this sense, we're seeing economic, environmental, social sorts of factors that are contributing to the patterns that Mead was able to observe during her fieldwork. In essence, one of the major conclusions from this work in New Guinea found that gender roles are not fixed, rigid, or defined for all time, but they can fluctuate or be used in purposeful ways. Two funny examples worth mentioning include that among the Arapesh, women were instructed to avoid yam gardens because they negatively affected their growth. And with the Mundugumor, couples would have sex in the gardens of others to ruin them. So these very strict taboo practices were seen as having real consequences. In the end, these ideas contributed to the complex view of culture in anthropology today. We now tend to discuss female culture and male culture within the context of sometimes contradictory ethnic, national, and world cultures.